Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to the Chase Academy and welcome to English Grade 9. I hope I'm audible, students, so be very attentive. Today we are going to cover a very important learning outcome, the SLO, ask and answer simple and higher order questions. Since this is about reading any text and then responding to it using by answering these different kinds of questions. So we have simple questions and higher order questions. How do we categorize it? Let's see. And we are doing this to guide or assess reading. So answering these questions, understanding the comprehension questions, they are actually helping in our reading comprehension. So we have questions that are starting with interrogative words like why or how. So when you know that when we have these kind of questions, जब हमारे पास इस तरह के questions होते हैं that ऐसा क्यों हुआ, compare करें, evaluate करें. So now we know that these questions are not simple. You cannot just simply find the answer in the reading comprehension. We need to think critically, right, in order to answer such questions. So these are our higher order thinking questions. Let's see. So we have categorized these questions according to lower order thinking skills and higher order thinking skills. So let's understand that. So lower order thinking skills, LOTS in short, this is an acronym, LOTS, that says lower order thinking skills questions. And then we have higher order thinking skills questions, which we call HOTS. So obviously lower order thinking questions require you to think less and find the answer as soon as possible with minimum effort, and you can just find the answer. For example, अगर आपसे कहा जाए how many characters are there in the story, so when did something happen, तो इसका आंसर quickly आप स्कैन करेंगे पैसेज में with our scanning strategy and you can find the answer. हमने सीखा था scanning and skimming, right? Skimming हम पढ़ते हैं, skimming हम करते हैं to find the main idea, the central point, कि क्या बात हो रही है, क्या message है. Obviously, for this kind of an question, we need to completely read everything. Not completely actually, but the first paragraph, the first line of every paragraph, the topic sentences, the conclusion, and important details. For scanning, we are just looking for the date, the fact, percentage, or any kind of such information. So when we are talking about scanning, तो lower order thinking questions सारे हमारे scanning strategy से solve हो जाते हैं. They are very easy to answer. But what about these higher order thinking questions? Obviously, we have to read the passage, the comprehension passage over and again. किस तरह का question आता है हमें? We are usually given a passage about any topic. It can be about biology, biodiversity, climate change. It can be about pollution. It can be about education, disadvantages of any kind of thing. For example, if we have a passage, let's say the disadvantages of technology for youth, the disadvantages of screen. So we know we will read the passage and then answer the questions. Now, जो higher order thinking questions हैं, they are asking you to compare something. Compare करें दो चीजों को. कौन सा question होगा ये? Higher order thinking question. If the question says that why did the writer say this? This is also again a higher order thinking question. We should not copy each and everything. We cannot copy from the text क्योंकि वो चीज उसमें directly mention नहीं है. We have to reread it and then find our answers, right? So lower order thinking questions की मैंने आपको कुछ examples दी हैं. They are like what is the setting of the story, when did that happen, कौन सी चीज कब हुई, किसने की, कैसे हुआ, मतलब कैसे हुआ तो higher order में आ जाएगा. ये सारी चीजें lower order thinking questions होते हैं. Simple questions like there can be closed questions, close-ended and open-ended. So close-ended questions कैसे हैं? कि yes or no में आंसर करेंगे आप, right? Do you agree? Yes or no? Yes, I agreed. Or no, I did not agree. And if you are asked that give reasons for not agreeing or agreeing with this statement, then you have to use your own words and use your critical thinking skills. And so these are the close-ended questions. Open-ended questions, they require you to write a sentence, some statements to justify it. So again, they are easy. You can find them and you can take help from the text directly. But higher order thinking questions are like evaluate करें, evaluate the situation, evaluate the given information, the idea. So evaluate करें, create करें और analyze करें. इस तरह के keywords जब होंगे हमारे questions में तो क्या होगा? Higher order thinking questions. We need to include our thinking skills. So ये दो basic categories हैं और क्वेश्चन देखकर आप समझ जाएंगे ये हायर ऑर्डर थिंकिंग क्वेश्चन है या लोअर ऑर्डर थिंकिंग क्वेश्चन है, एंड वी विल आंसर देम अकॉर्डिंगली. ऑलराइट, सो to generate more higher order questions, consider using these. So why, how, what if things start happening in the reverse? So what if, compare and contrast, all these questions are also higher order thinking skills questions. Evaluate, analyze the character, right? Analyze these two given characters, or evaluate the situation, provide reasons. All of these are higher order thinking questions. All right. Now we have this paragraph. सबसे पहले हम क्या करेंगे? We will read this again and again and then look for these questions. Now, questions like, why did the author choose to describe the old man as fixed on the horizon? What does this suggest about his thoughts or feelings? We have already done this paragraph, this passage in one of the previous lectures. That's why I have included it. So, इसमें this is a descriptive essay. This is a descriptive passage. The old man sat on the porch. Porch is at the front of the house. His gaze fixed on the distant horizon. Gaze means उसकी नजर fixed है, टिकी हुई है on the distant horizon, and a gentle breeze ruffled his white hair as he slowly rocked back and forth in the creaky rocking chair. The sun, beginning its descent, the sun is about to set, and it is casting long shadows across the yard, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. So this is a very beautiful scene. This is descriptive. Now, let's talk about these questions. So, why did the author choose to describe the old man as fixed on the horizon? Why did he choose this word? Fixed. So, the purpose of this is showing that the old man is in a deep thought. वो कुछ गहरा सोच रहा है. जैसे हम कुछ सोचते हैं तो हमारी नजर जो है कहीं फिक्स हो जाती है, और जब हमें कोई डिस्टर्ब करे, कोई आवाज आए, तो हम फौरन उस ख्याल से निकल आते हैं, बाहर आ जाते हैं. तो हमारी आईज फिक्स, इट मीन्स फिक्सिंग ऑन द होराइजन. द आइडिया ऑफ चूजिंग दिस वर्ड, व्हाट इज द लॉजिक? To tell us that the old man is in a deep thought. He is in a state of deep thinking. He's thinking about his life. He's thinking about his old age himself. He's thinking about his youth or the past years. So, ab dekha, you cannot find the direct answer over here. We have used our experience, our imagination, and logic to answer this kind of a question. So this is an example of a higher order thinking skills question. Now, higher order thinking questions में जो elements हैं, devices हैं, if it's a poetry, then you will have poetic devices like simile, metaphor. So if the examiner, if the question paper is saying that talk about imagery. Imagery पे बात करें या symbolism पे, irony पे बात करें about the story, about the given passage, then obviously this is not a lower order thinking question, rather it's a higher order thinking question. All right. So how does the imagery, we know imagery is a literary device. Creaking rocking chair contribute to the overall mood or atmosphere of the paragraph. So creaky rocking chair. You know there's a chair that goes back and forth, rocking chair. So it's old, it's making creaky sounds. So what does this tell us? क्या imagery हमारे दिमाग में आ रही है? जी students. The chair is not new, it's making noise. It is old, just like the old man, right? And this is telling us that he's moving. वो आगे पीछे move कर रहा है in the rocking chair. That's why it's making a creaky sound. So this tells us, this gives an image that a person is sitting at the porch at the front of the house and he's continuously moving back and forth. So एक image हमारे ज़हन में आ रहा है. What is the mood of the whole story? The mood can be sad. He must be in a grief. He is gloomy. He is sad, right? So this gives a atmosphere of sadness. तो इस तरह के क्वेश्चन को हमने अभी आंसर किया. This is also a higher order thinking question. Then what is the importance or significance of the son's descent in relation to the old man and the overall tone of the passage? So what is the tone? Tone कि वो कैसा असर आप पे छोड़ रहा है. Is it a happy tone? Mood कैसा है? Happy है, sad है, positive है, hopeful है या hopeless है? So again, this is an example of a higher order thinking question. So now we will see that what do you mean by the sun setting? The sun is about to set. It means the day is about to over and it will be dark really soon. बहुत जल्दी अंधेरा हो जाएगा and probably the old man will keep on sitting over there or he may go into the house inside the room. So again, this is giving us a sense of loneliness, sense of aloofness from the society. So again, इसको जब answer करेंगे, again this is a higher order thinking question. It requires our thinking skills. Now, lower order thinking questions हैं या higher order thinking questions हैं. It can be used, they can be asked at the end of a fictional passage or a non-fictional passage. वो passage fictional भी हो सकता है, about explaining something, about any phenomena of nature. It can be also about fiction. कोई story भी हो सकती है, right? So after each kind of these texts, we can expect some higher order thinking questions and lower order thinking questions. Now this is a poem, Poverty by Jane Taylor. Now let's see, do we have some questions? Yes. ये हमारे पास सारे higher order thinking questions हैं. How does the poet use the language? किस तरह उसने language को use किया, imagery को use किया? Why do you think the poet chose to describe XYZ? Or can you think of a time? Now this is a very introspective, personal kind of question that will be answered with your experience. So इस तरह के सारे questions जो हैं, again they can also be found at the end of a poem. कोई भी poem है, उसको आपसे पूछा जा सकता है कि इसे paraphrase करें या इसके questions को answer करें. So first we will read the poem. Let's read the first stanza. I saw an old cottage of clay, and only of mud was the floor. It was all falling into decay, and the snow drifted in at the door. Do we find a rhyme scheme? Of course, yes. Clay, decay, A, B, B. So क्या rhyming scheme है? A, B, A, B. This is the rhyming scheme. And we have figured out. Now यही scheme जो है, it is going on in the remaining stanzas of the poem. So when we are reading these, we have to mark the important words. Decay, all right, drifted at the door. हम phrases और words को underline करेंगे, highlight करेंगे, so that we can think about these. Now, we can answer these questions, right? Use of language and imagery. तो यहां पे आप देखें, ओल्ड कॉटेज ऑफ क्ले, एक कॉटेज है, एक कमरा है, वो क्ले से बना हुआ है, इट्स ओल्ड एंड only of mud was the floor. Floor is made up of mud. It was all falling into decay. It's falling. वो खराब हो रहा है. It's ruining. And the snow drifted in at the door. And there is snow at the door. It means क्या setting है? Snowy weather. सर्दियां हैं. So हमें इससे एक imagery generate हुई है हमारे दिमाग में. We can picture and visualize के क्या setting display की जा रही है. What is the imagery? All right, now, Poet's use of language and imagery evoke empathy for the characters. Why do you think the poet chose to describe the cottage as made of clay and mud? To give us a sense of empathy, so that we can empathize with the people जिनके बारे में ये poem है. This is about poverty, गुर्बत के बारे में. And there are some characters in the poem and their life and their way of living is being described. So we can have a sense of empathy, हम उनके साथ empathize करें, उनके condition को समझें and हम उनकी मदद करें. All right. Now we are aware of higher order thinking questions. Totally different from simple questions, and सिर्फ एक लाइन में अगर आप इसका जवाब लिखेंगे only in one sentence, that is not enough. So these kind of questions come into the long question categories. All right, or even if it's coming in the short question categories, still you have to write more than few sentences so that the answer is justified. Here is a worksheet attached. क्या करेंगे? Simple, you will read this passage and answer these higher order thinking question. Yes? No, the SLO is focused on actually higher order thinking questions. Simple questions तो हम answer करते हैं, lower order thinking questions yes, no. तो आप एक चीज mention कर देंगे passage में से. These are simple questions. But the problem comes when we are answering higher order thinking questions. Clear है students? So जब हम higher order thinking questions को करेंगे, this is the main point of our SLO. How do we answer higher order thinking question? So अगर आपके पास 10 marks का कोई question है, there may be 2 simple questions and 3 higher order thinking questions. Then we have to answer it and justify our answers with critical thinking. हम सोचेंगे, समझेंगे, लॉजिक बनाएंगे और फिर उसको आंसर करेंगे. अगर हमसे मेटाफर के बारे में पूछा गया है तो हम बताएंगे मेटाफर किस तरह इस्तेमाल हुआ है. ऑलराइट, इमेजरी कहां पर है, हम बताएंगे सिंबलिज्म, सिंबल्स कितने इस्तेमाल हुए हैं, या आयरनी कौन सी है. आयरनी क्या है, हमने लास्ट लेक्चर में पढ़ा था, सिचुएशंस वेयर देयर थिंग्स आर टोटली हैपनिंग ऑपोजिट टू द एक्सपेक्टेशंस. जो हमने एक्सपेक्ट किया है, जो सोचा होता है उससे बिल्कुल मुख्तलिफ, सरप्राइजिंग एलिमेंट इज देयर. So that all of these situations are irony. So figurative language के सारे questions, figures of speech, literary devices, they are higher order thinking questions. So this was all about today's lecture. Now, before we wrap up, if you have any kind of a question, any confusion, students, you are very warmly welcome to ask right now. Yeah. Clear? So we are clear about higher order thinking skills questions and lower order thinking skills questions. Now इसको practice करने के लिए you will solve the worksheet, the skill sheet, read the passage and then answer those higher order thinking questions. How do we recognize it? Evaluate. create, analyze, compare करें, contrast करें दो ideas को. All of these questions are higher order thinking questions. They are very important and they are usually with the most numbers, with the most marks. This is all about today, students. Now, do we have a question? Clear है? What about Afia, Ali? All right. Zumeed, are you clear? All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video lesson. Till then, just take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.